It was a chilly autumn evening when a little boy, no older than 5, found himself alone on the bustling city streets. He had been holding his mother's hand just moments ago, but in the blink of an eye, she was gone. Crowds of people hurried past him, unaware of his silent distress. His tiny hands trembled as he wiped away tears from his round, frightened face. He called out for his mother, his voice barely rising above the honking of cars and the chatter of pedestrians. But no one stopped. Shivering, he wandered aimlessly down the sidewalk, confusion clouding his innocent eyes. He turned down an alley, hoping to find a familiar face, but instead, he found himself more lost than before. That was when a rough but kind voice called out to him. "Hey there, little buddy, you okay?" The voice belonged to a man with weathered skin, ragged clothes, and tired eyes. He was sitting on a worn-out blanket with a small bag of belongings beside him. The little boy sniffled and shook his head. I can't find my mommy," he whispered. The homeless man, named Thomas, felt a pang of sympathy. He knew the pain of being lost, not just physically, but in life as well. He had once been a man with a home, a job, and a family, but life had dealt him a cruel hand, leaving him to survive on the streets. Even so, kindness had never left his heart. Thomas reached out a reassuring hand. "Don't worry, kid. We'll find her. Let's just sit here for a while, and I bet she'll come looking for you." The boy nodded hesitantly and sat beside him. Thomas offered him a half-eaten granola bar from his pocket, and the child, still hungry from missing dinner, took it gratefully. Minutes turned into an hour. Then 2. Thomas kept the boy engaged with funny stories, trying to keep his mind off his fear. He hummed an old lullaby, the kind his mother used to sing to him when he was young, and it seemed to soothe the boy. 4 long hours passed before they finally heard the sound of hurried footsteps and frantic cries. A woman, breathless and disheveled, ran towards them, her eyes filled with panic and relief. "My baby. Oh my God, my baby," she sobbed as she scooped the little boy into her arms, hugging him so tightly it was as if she feared losing him again. The child, overwhelmed with emotions, buried his face into his mother's shoulder, his little hands clutching her dress. Thomas watched silently, a small smile on his lips. But the relief in the mother's eyes quickly turned to anger as she turned toward him. "You should have taken him to the police," she snapped. "I've wasted hours searching for my baby." Thomas opened his mouth to explain, to tell her that he didn't want the little boy to be scared in a police station surrounded by strangers. But before he could speak, she had already turned on her heel and walked away, still murmuring her frustration under her breath. Thomas sighed. He hadn't expected gratitude, but a simple "thank you" would have been nice. Shaking his head, he settled back onto his blanket, pulling his worn-out coat tighter around him as the cold night air settled in. Just as he was about to close his eyes for the night, something caught his attention. A glimmer on the pavement. He leaned forward and picked up a delicate gold ring encrusted with tiny diamonds. It looked expensive. As he examined it, he realized it must belong to the woman who had just left. He hesitated. A part of him told him to chase after her and return it. But another part whispered a different idea. This ring could be his way out. He had been living on the streets for years, struggling for food, shelter, and warmth. If the ring was valuable, it could change everything. Curious, he made his way to the nearest jewelry store the next morning. The jeweler, an elderly man with glasses perched on the tip of his nose, studied the ring under a magnifying glass. When he looked up, his eyes were wide with surprise. "This is a rare piece," he said. "It's worth at least $25,000. Thomas felt his heart pound. That kind of money could give him a second chance. A small apartment, food, maybe even a fresh start. He clenched the ring tightly, his mind spinning with possibilities. But then, he remembered something. A kind stranger's words from long ago. Keep doing good, and God will bless you the right way. Taking a deep breath, Thomas shook his head. I can't sell it, he murmured, pushing the ring back across the counter. Instead of taking the easy way out, he set out to find the woman. It took some time, but eventually, he spotted her outside a cafe, holding her son's hand. He approached cautiously, clearing his throat. Ma'am, he said hesitantly. She turned, and her expression changed to one of surprise and guilt when she saw him. I think you dropped this last night, he said, holding out the ring. The woman gasped, her hands flying to her mouth. Tears welled in her eyes as she gently took the ring from his palm. This was my father's last gift to me before he passed away 22 years ago, she whispered, her voice breaking. I thought I had lost it forever. She looked up at Thomas, truly seeing him for the first time. Shame filled her as she remembered how she had treated him the night before. Here was a man who had nothing, yet he had chosen honesty over personal gain. I'm so sorry for how I acted, she said sincerely. You saved my son, and now you've returned something priceless to me. I want to make it up to you. That night, she started a GoFundMe campaign, sharing Thomas's story with the world. People were moved by his kindness, and donations started pouring in. Within weeks, the campaign had raised an astonishing $500,000. When Thomas learned about it, he was overwhelmed with gratitude. He used the money wisely, finding a small home, getting clean clothes, and enrolling in a job training program. But more importantly, he didn't stop being kind. He donated a portion of his money to local shelters and spent time helping others who were struggling just as he had. The little boy, now knowing Thomas as the man who had helped him when he was lost, often visited him with his mother. They brought him warm meals, shared stories, and became his second family. In the end, kindness had changed everything, and Thomas knew, deep in his heart, that he had made the right choice. Because kindness always comes back, sometimes in ways we never expect.